famous cask ales, snacks to keep you upright, and a whip that's not a weapon. This week, we're exploring the pubs of London.
Traveling the world to bring you delicious dishes, tasty beverages, and interesting experiences. This is the Destination Eat Drink Podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
I'm Brent Peterson. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink, the travel podcast for foodies. Destination Eat Drink is for foodies who like to travel and travelers who love to eat. And this week, it's pints of bitters, IPAs, ciders, and much more as we visit the pubs of London. But first, take a second and rate and review the podcast. It only takes a moment on your podcast app, and your 5 stars for Destination Eat Drink help other foodie travelers find the show. And thank you very much. John Warland is the founder and brains behind Liquid Food Tours at liquidfoodtours.com. He takes thirsty travelers all over London to experience pub culture and learn about his city. John tells me how to find a good pub, why bartenders are a great resource for travelers, and the street of shame. Plus, he gives some pub recommendations as well as the beer you must try when visiting London. Okay, I'm thirsty, so let's drink.
Destination Eat Drink.
John Warland from Liquid History Tours in London. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink. It's great to get to talk to you about pubs, about beer, and about history in London. Thanks for being on the show.
Great to be here and possibly share a pint.
Oh, that would be fantastic. It's a little early here in Portugal, but you know what? We can do it anyway. You guys at Liquid History Tours do a really cool thing, taking people from pub to pub. And I think that people all over the world are fascinated by the pubs in London particularly. What is it about pub culture that makes these spots so unique?
I think you're right. People get drawn to London for the big sights of Westminster and the Tower of London and the river and all sorts of exciting things. But we still have 3,500 pubs in the capital, and going for a pint in a traditional London pub is an incredibly authentic experience. It's something a lot of visitors will often have seen maybe on the television, in the movies, Guy Ritchie, and their lovely cinematic backdrops to all myriad of life. So to step through the doors out of curiosity and understand how locals live, drink, meet, socialize, they're still the backbone in many ways of an informal meeting house all over the capital. So I think going for a pint in a London pub often ranks in one of the top 10 must-do things in London.
Absolutely. For me, in the top 2 things to do in London.
Top one.
Maybe the top thing to do in London. You mentioned traditional pubs, and I think when you say traditional pubs, the thing that pops into my head is maybe something from the Victorian era. And I'm curious, John, are there different kinds of pubs? So these traditional pubs, but modern pubs, neighborhood pubs, more high-end pubs. Are there different kinds, and what are they?
Yeah, there's an incredible diversity of pubs that people can enjoy in the city now. You have to remember that the Romans, when they came tippling over London Bridge nearly 2,000 years ago, they set up the taverns, the wine tavernas. Probably the oldest pub in London might be the Prospect of Whitby. You might be able to date it to the old Cheshire Cheese. They're around the 16th, 17th century. So you can go back that far and you can sit and drink in a room probably 300 years old. And most of the pubs people will go in, you're right, are probably Victorian. So they become incredibly popular as the urban population soars in the 1800s. The Victorians not only built brilliant railways and bridges and harbours all over sort of the country and the world, they gave the populace parliaments for the people, palaces for the people. So we see the gin palace style coming, full of opulent lighting, etched glass, mosaic, or it could be a spit and sawdust sort of more proletariat offering round the corner. There's a pub for every person. We have a couple of great Art Deco pubs that were built, within the last 100 years, such as the Duke, if architecture is your thing. And within modern office complex, they will often put in a modern day equivalent of the pub. So we're still building pubs today. I think it's fair to say the more modern pub is a food orientated pub. So you can go and enjoy a 1-star Michelin meal at somewhere like the Harwood Arms. And gastropubs are a great thing to go for some upmarket food within a pub. It's informal, but you still get some great cuisine to enjoy. But I think whilst in London, always try and seek out what we call the wet-led pubs. They might not serve any food at all other than a couple of simple bar snacks, scampi fries, bacon fries, pork scratchings, just enough to keep you vertical because you're really there to enjoy the liquid delights. And that's usually a cask ale or a lager or a cider as well. So there's a pub for every person and different times as well. You might be going with one person for a romantic evening. You can hide down in the cellars of the Cheshire Cheese and have a tete-a-tete by the fire, or you could have a work colleague leaving and you think, I'm going to go to the old Bank of England, magnificent grade 2 listed hall where you could probably go with 40 of your friends and enjoy a good knees up there.
My head is spinning listening to you, John. You brought up so much cool stuff, but one quick thing I want to talk to you about, and we'll talk about pub grub a little bit later. But you said a phrase that I had not heard before, and that is pork scratchings. What the heck are pork scratchings?
A pork scratching is possibly the ultimate bar snack. As always, it's laden in salt, but it's the skin of a pig that will have been cooked probably in a sort of high temperature oven until crispy, and then slathered in a little bit more salt, chopped up into small, we call them crisps, you probably know them as chips, into small little curls, and they look like, yeah, I think that's where the word scratching comes from. And then they're bagged up. So for 1 or 2 bags, when you're having a nice sort of beer, it's the perfect sort of beer snack, incredibly salty, little bit of pork flavor in there. Yeah, you'll find it behind most bars. And again, they can be posh. They can come out like an Italian breadstick, grissini, and all light and crisp and bubbly in sort of gastropubs, or just cheap and cheerful down your local boozer as well.
So vegans beware, those may not be potato chips that you're sticking your hand into.
Yes. Yeah. Approach with mild caution.
Very good. So I'm curious, you talked about the different kinds of pubs, and I'm wondering for like a first-time visitor to London or someone who doesn't have a great deal of experience in pubs, what would your advice be to finding a good pub? Because you said there's 3,500 of them in London. We can't visit them all, no matter how hard I might try. How do I find one that is especially good? Are there telltale signs where I can say, okay, I see this is a place I want to walk into? Or do we have to just rely on guides like you, John?
I would always speak to the local people. As we know, they are the sort of gateway to the good times. I think if it's your first time visit to London, you're looking for the grandstand ones, the ones possibly like the Churchill Arms. Most people have heard of Winston Churchill. They want to visit it. They'll be near Kensington Palace, so it's a short stroll away. If you come at Christmas, it can have a couple of 100 Christmas trees on the front, 10,000 lights, and it's run by a company called Fuller's. They've been brewing beer in London since, I think, 1845. So they have the heritage of the city. And within a pub like the Churchill Arms, you'll definitely get a pint of London Pride. Historically, the most iconic beer in London. It's equivalent to maybe a Guinness in Dublin. Don't leave London without having a pint of Pride, because it's been brewed by the River Thames for over 150 years. And anything run by Fuller's is going to be a good pub. They own quite a few pubs, so as well as kind of enjoying their hospitality, try and seek out the sort of mum and pop free houses. They are one pub operations, and it's their way or the highway. They will be run by idiosyncratic landlords who might have quirky opening times, or not allow children on mobile phones, or wheelie bags from the airport. I mean, it's full of character, but if you can just get down into those little side streets and find them, even in the heart of Covent Garden, most visitors to London will be going to the theatre or the restaurants or round by Trafalgar Square. But you can't remember that every part of London is a small village. So if you're working in the West End shows or in the restaurants and in the Savoy Hotel, you need somewhere to go for a quiet drink with your colleagues, maybe recruit somebody to work backstage because you're short-staffed. So just off the Strand, very close to the oldest restaurant in London, Rules, you'd find a pub called the Nell Gwyn. It's down a little snicket of an alley, and it's the West End's village pub, really. You can find all manner of people in there. It's got a jukebox, good beer, has little pickled eggs behind the bar, but they can be hiding not quite in plain sight in Zone 1 Central London. You have to work a little bit harder, but I would always suggest to a visitor, go and see the grandstand pubs, go to a riverside pub like the Prospect of Whitby, go down to Borough Market, enjoy a pint in Shakespeare's Local. It's where he performed before moving down to the Globe Theatre. Go and see these iconic pubs like the Blackfriar, incredible arts and craft, museum quality, decorative mosaics and glass, equivalent to going to the V&A. And once you've seen a good smattering of those, just try and get into the back streets. Possibly while you're in one of these iconic pubs, speak to the people behind the bar. They'll be going for a drink somewhere, and it won't be in their own pub, and they'll be sneaking around the corner to a more local venue as well.
This is a great point. This is advice that I always give no matter what city you're in. The best people to ask advice for where to go is bartenders, because they go out almost more than anybody else, and rarely do they go to drink in their own bar. They can also give you great restaurant recommendations because they're tied in to the hospitality industry. These folks are a tremendous resource for information if you want to get around in a city that you're not familiar with.
Absolutely correct. Give them a little tip, buy them a drink and bend their ear for 20 minutes and find out where they live, where they love. And you will always just be stepping one block away from where the other tourists are as well. So, follow the locals, follow your nose, and be curious.
What was the beer that you mentioned that you had to have when you come to London? You mentioned it and then it went straight out of my head.
The beer, probably the most iconic pint in London, is London Pride.
London
It is
Pride.
brewed by Fuller's down in Chiswick. A lot of your visitors flying into Heathrow, if they're coming into London by taxi, they might smell the hops and the malt as they pass the Hogarth roundabout. So actually, they do a great brewery tour. If you're coming to or from London, definitely consider that. And the beer itself is named after the spirit of the Blitz. When London is flattened by the German Luftwaffe, we don't have the time or resource to redevelop a lot of the city quickly. So we end up with bomb sites all over the city, rubble, scree, and one small little plant from the alpine regions learns to inhabit the scree. The Latin name is Saxifragum exurbium, and the common name for that plant is London Pride. It's a symbol of the city that we will get burnt down many times, we will get bombed, we will be hit by pandemics nearly every 100 years, but London has a resilience, it will regrow, it will regenerate, and the beer, the London Pride, is named after that sort of spirit of the Blitz.
Great story. I was talking with Granier Lawler. She does whiskey tours in Dublin, and she talked about pubs in Dublin. And one thing that she brought up to me that I thought was fascinating was how pubs in Dublin and Ireland, for that matter, are really meeting places rather than drinking establishments. Yes, you can go there and have a pint of Guinness in the case of Dublin, but it's also a place where people just go to meet and to hang out. I'm wondering, what is the kind of etiquette that we should be aware of in pubs in London? And is there the same kind of meeting place culture?
I think you definitely can go to a pub and meet. You don't have to drink alcohol. That's a key point for people. You're always welcome in a pub because it's warm, it's bright, it's welcoming. One of the key points of Dublin and London is the weather. So it's somewhere dry as well. And that is the key piece about pubs. They're public houses. They're not private members' club. All of the public are welcome. I think as one enters a pub, one must show some etiquette towards the sort of landlord, as in I wouldn't go in, meet somebody and not spend any money in there. That doesn't mean having a pint of beer, but it might be a little bit of food, maybe a hot drink, teas, coffees, try to extend some gratitude for them offering this meeting place. But I would probably say most people, if they're not drinking, London has such a broad range of coffee shops and restaurants and informal meeting spaces that predominantly to go into a pub, one of the draws is as ever something with a little bit of alcohol in it, but it is not compulsory.
Your tours, John, are called Liquid History Tours. So you put history in the title. There's going to be history. And from talking with you for just 15 minutes here, you're a wealth of history. So it sounds to me like this is not going to be textbook history. We're not going to have a quiz at the end. Well, maybe we will have a quiz at the end of the day. But it doesn't sound like it's going to be very stuffy. That's my impression. I haven't been on your tours yet. But tell me a little bit about what people can expect when they go on a Liquid History Tour.
Yeah, I mean, a Liquid History Tour is a brilliant 3 to 3.5 hour walk, irrespective of the pub stops. We meet in the shadow of St. Paul's Cathedral, the masterpiece of Sir Christopher Wren. We drop down to the Blackfriars. We see the churches of St. Bride. We cross the river of the River Fleet, hidden underground in London. We then travel along Fleet Street, looking at beautiful Art Deco buildings. We meet Dr. Johnson, Samuel Pepys. We see where Shakespeare bought his first house in London. Then you end up in legal London. So Monday to Friday, you bump into some of the King's councils. We might be able to sneak into one of the Inns of Court, such as Temple Inn. People remember the Knights Templar, the Dan Brown Da Vinci Code conspiracy theory. That's where it originated from. And then it's where Shakespeare premieres Twelfth Night through these hidden doorways before we emerge out opposite the magnificent neo-Gothic Royal Courts of Justice and possibly head across Lincoln's Inn Field. Each walk is not prescriptive. Each guide has a choice of maybe 16 pubs over 3 hours to go to maybe 4, maybe 5. So it's in the spirit of a classic British pub crawl. It means the guides have the autonomy to tailor the route to the group and interest in front of them. The weather, we've got the London Marathon coming up, so we'll try to take a little bit of that in, but then go and avoid the crowds in a lovely locally owned backstreet pub. So it's a real mixer. Come for the walk, you get the big history of the big sites, you get the quirky, silly history, you get wonderful idiosyncratic tales of the people who've lived in this city for over 2,000 years. And then probably every 20 or 30 minutes, we enter one of the finest and most historic pubs in London just to have a, light refreshment and maybe a kind of quick bar snack, some of those pork scratchings. And it's a lovely afternoon walk. We usually do it from 2 p.m. until 5:30, leading up into the West End, ideal for a pre-dinner sort of drop off if you're going to the theatre, etc. And it's what British people do anyway. Often people come into central London and will do a mini pub crawl themselves. You'll do something called a whip, where everyone will put in 20 or 30 pounds, give it to one person, and that's your central fund for the drinks and the snacks. And when it runs out after a few pubs, everyone puts another 20 pounds in. So you have this communal sharing, and you don't have to worry about not getting your round in, which your listeners should be aware of. If in the pub you're drinking with somebody, you should always be offering them to buy the next drink. If it's a group of 6 people, it's quite a lot of drinks. And you don't want to be the person who's snuck away from the group without getting your round in at the bar. Your reputation will go before you the next time.
Very good. Let's say, John, I've had my London Pride. I enjoyed it, but now I'm ready for my next one. Let's say I want to have a cask ale. First of all, what is a cask ale, and how would you suggest people enjoy one in a London pub?
Yeah, I mean, London Pride is in fact a cask ale. It's a classic.
Very good. I've obviously never had one.
It's a classic sort of session bitter. And what a cask ale is, it's the traditional warm beer of London. So for it to qualify as a cask beer, it cannot be artificially refrigerated or carbonated. So it sits like a sourdough yeast. It's a natural organic product. When it arrives at the pub, it's settled in the cellar. It's going through secondary fermentation. And when that cask, traditionally wood, but now it will often be metal, is ready to serve, they will tap it. And because it's a live product that can't be carbonated, you can't add CO2 to it or any nitrogen. You'll notice on the pub as you go in, the bar staff are pulling at large wooden or ceramic, porcelain pumps because they are naturally having to create the vacuum to bring that into your glass and serve it. So it will arrive with a slight froth on the top, subject to how it's served, but it won't have the sort of fizzy bubbles of a lager or a cider. And what that means is it's incredibly soft on your palate. It's usually served at around 11 degrees rather than, say, the 5 degrees of a cold keg beer. But it opens the flavor palate, and it's much smoother to drink. It stops you from getting sort of bloated if you're drinking, let's say, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 over a period of time. And it has often a pleasant low ABV, I would say averaging around 4%. So it's a beer which creates a lovely mellifluous softness within the pubs. We all get mildly inebriated on it without any sort of craziness. And that's why we call it a session bitter. You could start at midday and probably ease through a leisurely afternoon, having 4 or 5 of those and having a lovely time. I think your visitors will be familiar with maybe the North American style IPAs, and they've probably got ABVs between 5 and 10%. So it's a completely different drinking culture. We do have craft beers. You can find those beers behind often a pub as well, behind the bar of a pub. But the traditional culture is probably low and slow within reason. And that's why cask ale, all your visitors should try it. They may not love it, but if they get a taste for it, it's actually usually a little bit cheaper because of the way it's stored. But that is the historic beer of London, and it's worth supporting. And again, speak to your bartender. Feel free to sip before you sup. If the bar isn't too busy, then feel free to have a little taster, because every cask ale, it's going to come not just from London. It might be regional, it might be sent down from Yorkshire or the Lake District. It can be from all over the United Kingdom, and it's worth exploring the flavor palettes through to the different, maybe even porters or the sort of amber ales or ruby ales as we move into autumn. And yeah, highly recommended for low and slow drinking.
Nice. You mentioned the word bitters in there. Is that interchangeable? Is that an interchangeable term, or is that a subset?
Bitter could be largely interchangeable. You could walk into a pub and ask for a pint of bitter, and if there's only one, they would serve you that. It gets its name, obviously, due to the content of hops within it. So I think it can sound off-putting to sort of possibly visitors to have a pint of something very bitter, but it means that it has that savoury, often malty, hoppy sort of aroma, giving it that sort of lovely, warm and comforting flavour. And the other beauty of it being served at a slightly warmer temperature, in London, let's say it's snowing, you don't want a cold beer. So a cask ale sits really nicely on that. Or when it's really hot during the summer, it's a cool beer, but it's not a cold beer. And it just allows you to be lightly refreshing at all times of year.
With the IPAs, they tend to be, when you talk about the word bitter, those tend to be much more bitter than just a cask ale because of the yeastiness in the cask ale. You get that more malty flavor, which I think is a lot more pleasant in my opinion. So I think those are really enjoyable.
Yeah, and I think when visitors come to London, if they're fans of the IPA, they'll find session IPAs such as possibly Beavertown on tap. It's run by one of the sons of the Led Zeppelin rock stars, and he found it at Tottenham Hotspur Football Club.
Oh, Logan Plant. I heard about him. Logan Plant is a brewer now, right? Robert Plant's son.
Yeah, exactly. And that you'll find that across a lot of pubs in central London. They've got huge distribution rights. It has a very easy drinking session IPA profile, so it won't hit those really hoppy notes people are possibly more familiar with, but you will find those behind the bar. And like I mentioned, there are craft beer bars everywhere. So if you want to be drinking 13% lambic beers from Belgium or anything else, it's all there for you. And possibly have a trip down to the Bermondsey Beer Mile on a Friday, Saturday or Sunday, where you have some of the best craft beer brewers in the city open their tap rooms, and you can just trundle from bar to bar trying their wares.
We're drinking all of these beers, John. We've got to fill something up with our stomach besides pork scratchings. Talk a little bit about the pub grub that we can have. You mentioned that not a lot, but several of these places, they have more elevated cuisine now. And that's kind of changed in the last few decades in London. The food in London now, I think in America, there's this persistent stereotype that is totally unfair about London cuisine. And the fact of the matter is London is an amazing food city, and you can get amazing food in pubs. So talk a little bit, fly the flag a little bit for London pub grub about how good it is and what are the different kinds of things that you can get.
Yeah, I think food has come a long way in London, but I think London is as good an eating city as somewhere like New York. I think we have as many Michelin star restaurants other than probably Paris and Tokyo. It's sort of up there, whether it's fine dining or really something very simple. You can't forget the cosmopolitan nature of the city brings such diversity to us. So within a pub, once you've gone past the most basic bar snacks, traditionally you could be looking at a Scotch egg, maybe a sausage roll, a small pork pie. So a Scotch egg was invented by Fortnum and Mason. I believe it was for Queen Victoria as a picnic food. So, if it's designed for the royals but found behind the bar of your pub, it's a wonderful thing to cut into through the breadcrumb, the spiced sausage meat into a sort of molten or oozing duck's egg or hen's egg, and that can be elevated up to one Michelin star standard quite easily. And then moving beyond that, your pub food could be, again, it could be your fish and chips, it can be your grilled items. Most people know the history of pies in London, not just Sweeney Todd style pies, but we've got some wonderful pastry chefs offering those as well. And never forget the desserts of England. If you like it sticky and sweet, from sticky toffee pudding to spotted dick with custard and all such delightful things, you will find it often in the pub as well. But also never forget the diversity of the pub means you could go to a desi pub, which kind of refers to the Indian sort of pub culture. So somewhere like the Gladstone Arms down not far from Borough Market, you can have chicken madras pies or pakoras with your beer, and you get a completely different take on a traditional menu.
John, before I let you go, I was browsing around your website this morning before we were going to go talk, and I have to ask you about this because when I saw this phrase, I thought, man, this sounds super fascinating. There's got to be a story here. So what is the Street of Shame?
The Street of Shame could be any street, I guess, after a few pints of the hard stuff. But historically, we refer to the Street of Shame as Fleet Street. Fleet Street was former home to most of the world's journalistic press. So pre-technology, Fleet Street sits between the City of London, which is the financial capital, the equivalent of Wall Street, and the City of Westminster sits at the other end of Fleet Street, and that is home to the politicians and the army and government. But the journalists would sit in the middle, and all the news from the British Empire and London and the countries would go up and down that street, and the journalists would drag people in. They'd be writing tomorrow's headlines for good or for bad, and that's where it gets its name, the sort of Street of Shame. So in London, we say the City of London makes all the money, and the City of Westminster, with the politicians and the military, spends it. And in the middle, you had the journalists getting their stories in either direction. And the other people in the middle are, of course, the legal profession. So between the Royal Courts of Justice, the second highest civil court in the land, and the Old Bailey, the Central Criminal Court, the highest criminal court in the land, that's where you still find the journalists and the sort of legal profession. And certainly the legacy of those two industries are right there. And both industries, whether you're a journalist or a lawyer, you like to drink historically, and it's where all the gossip would have been poured out over an evening.
Going both ways, I imagine, from the journalists to the lawyers and the lawyers back to the journalists again. That is so interesting and fun. Well, John, it's been great talking to you. I've been fascinated by London pubs, and it's been way too many years since I've been to London. I got to get back and enjoy a liquid history tour with you. Thank you so much for being on Destination Eat Drink. This has been a fun conversation, and it's still early here in Portugal, but I think it's time to go out and get a quick pint.
Never too early for a quick pint. And if I may, for those that are unable to join us in London for a tour immediately, you can always buy a copy of our Liquid History book. And that sums up maybe 50 historical pubs you should go to once in your life.
We'll have a link to that in the show notes so that folks can get that. But if you could give the website right now, that would be great, John.
Our website is www.liquidhistorytours.com, and our books are available on Amazon. Search for Liquid History and it should pop up for you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks a lot, Brent.
Okay, that's John Warland from Liquid History Tours. You can book your tour at liquidhistory.com. I've also got a link in the show notes, as well as a link to his book, Liquid History, an illustrated guide to London's greatest pubs. And if you want to hear more from my conversation with John, check out my Substack. John tells me about the health of pub culture in London and England in general. And that complete interview is available to my Substack members at destinationeatdrink.substack.com. Well, that's it for this week. Next week, we're in Edinburgh, Scotland for haggis, neeps and tatties, and single malt whiskey. Don't miss that. Until then, I've got plenty of foodie travel at destinationeatdrink.com. I have a new video out. It's about one of Italy's great foodie cities. You know about Rome and Naples and Florence and Venice, but what about Bari, Italy? It's one of the food gems in the country. It's for foodies who love unpretentious street food. You can see that by clicking on my video tab at destinationeatdrink.com or go to my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@destinationeatdrink946. I also just posted a new story about a hero journalist in Malta. She fought political corruption in her country and paid dearly for it. You can read that story at destinationeatdrink.com/blog. And speaking of Malta, my brand new Malta foodie travel guide is coming out next week. It'll be available with all my other foodie guides from Belgium, Spain, Italy, and of course, Portugal. You can download those at buymeacoffee.com/destinationeatdrink. And thank you very, very much. Destination Eat Drink is distributed by the Radio Misfits Podcast Network and Ed Silla. Thanks, Ed. I'm Brent Peterson, and I'll see you down the road.
Join us next week for another culinary adventure on Destination Eat Drink, a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.